Hey, do you like characters with big normals? I mean, big normals? What about sauce? A1, Worcestershire? Well, I got just the character. Introducing Cooler. He won't put hands on you. No. We're talking hands, feet, tail, elbows, knees. No headbutt though. Feeling tired of holding pressure? Get that shit out of here. Tired of getting super dashed? Get that shit out of here. Just kidding, here's the video. How's it going, everyone? I'm just gonna get right into it. Not gonna waste you guys' time. First thing I want to talk about is his 5L. Now his 5L is a forward progressing normal that is -3 on block. I've talked about this in other videos before, as you know. It's one of his best stagger string tools, and you kind of want to cycle this between 5L and 2L just to keep your string safe, as 2L is 0 on block, so you can always go back in with 5L. Now, as far as 2L goes, it's a decent normal. It's a good counter poke if you're defending and you would just want to kind of challenge. It actually gatlings into itself too, so you can do like this and then 2M to confirm, or 5M, or whatever you're comfortable with. You can also do like 2L 5L out of it, but it's recommended that you don't, just because you're holding down back and you're most safe if you're doing this. So together they kind of cycle into each other, and you can always stay in front of the opponent, which is really good for Cooler. Now his 5LL is pretty standard. It's not much to write home about. It doesn't have a ground bounce or vacuum effect, so it's kind of just standard. I wouldn't throw this out as a confirm or anything like that. It's just really a stagger tool. Now his 5LL, on the other hand, is actually not good. Like, I wouldn't recommend using it ever unless you're trying to use it for combo filler, but other than that, there's nothing really unique about this. It is safe on block, so there's that. Now for his normals, he has or M normals I should say, he has a 5M that goes very, very far, and it has a 2M that goes very, very, very far. And these are your main tools to poke against, your Vegetos, against your Gogetas. All of these things, they're really good to use against them. However, they can be a little committal. As you can see, this one's 32 frames, this one is 37 frames, so you have to be wary of when to use and how to use them. Now, I recommend using 5L in place of 5M for certain situations, but that's just something you have to get comfortable with, because you may get super dashed a lot using this. So with that being said, 2M being the longer of the two, it always goes into 5H. It also goes into 2S or 5S pretty well as well. And there's certain situations where you can use these, like for instance this, right? If you were to get the JS to connect, then you can run up and 2M them if they're trying to jump or something like that. It really just depends on how you like to play and who you play the character with. But we're gonna move on. His H normals, so he has 5H, which is a very lengthy normal, but I don't recommend using it as a lengthy normal like a lariat, because it is just very bad on whiff. As you can see, it's -44, so that's easily punishable. And on hit, it's really good. So if you were to get the hit, it actually confirms into itself pretty well. However, it's not something I would recommend using in this meta of like Vegeto A and then you're like Gogeta A's. It's just not worth it to use it. However, this next normal is worth using. So his 3H is actually pretty good. It works against assist, projectiles, characters that are in the air. So certain characters have no real answer for this actually, but you still have to be careful with it because of how committal it can be. So for example, this is -53, which is no one wants to be -53, so you have to kind of dash to get the extra length there. It's -10 on block, which is not bad. However, you can go into 5S, or you can go into a special, or you can call an assist behind it. All of these good things, right? So just be wary of using 3H. It's something that I wouldn't recommend using all the time, just because it can be easily counter hit and the opponent can just stall you out of it as well. So with that being said, we're going to move on to 6H, which is his I would say second low in his string, which is -5 and also forward progressing, but it's not something that you want to do as a stagger. You don't want to do like this. Like, that's not don't do that. It's 15 frames, so it has considerable startup for most of his normals. As you can see, this one's 13 frames, 10 frames. This one is 15 frames. So it's not the fastest, but it is really a good check, because it's -5, and you can also continue your pressure afterwards. And it also works as a good tool to check people who like to jump against Cooler, because it is a load that they have to worry about. So I wouldn't use this in neutral either. I mean, it's minus 35, but there's no real use for it in neutral. I would just recommend using your standard M buttons or your 5L for neutral. So moving on, we have 5S, which is a pretty standard key blast. It actually goes really far if you use it in the air. So it covers the entire screen, which is really good. However, the grounded version doesn't have as much use as the air version, so I would not do something like this just because it's not really worth it. However, if you are at something like this distance, then you can do like something like 5S and the 5H to cover the distance. That will beat jump in certain cases, so they have to be very careful about what they do against Cooler in that situation. Now, as far as his 6M goes, it's not really that great, but it's not really bad either. It's pretty standard of a 6M. With Cooler, you don't usually 6M, but if you do, it's not a bad option. I mean, you can space yourself to be plus as well. So just, lab the setups, understand which positions you can be plus off of it, and it's another thing you can add to your toolkit. Now, moving on to his air normals, we have a few of them. Well, excuse me, let me talk about 2H real quick. This is the bane of my existence right here. So 2H, it's not bad. As you can see, it's minus 15, 14 frame startup. It's actually kind of fast for 2H, but however, so in certain situations, this works, right? So you can actually get out of the corner. It won't hit them. So you have to be careful about when you use this, because you can do like this, right? And you can just completely whiff, and you're punishable there. So you have to be careful when you 2H, because it's not something that's always guaranteed. I would recommend labbing what can be 2H in the corner, especially if certain characters go for certain setups, things of that nature. But overall, it's not a bad 2H. It's just not something I would rely on 100%. Now for his air normals are actually really good. So his JL is a standard JL. It hits pretty high, but it's also sort of non-committal. You can do 4LL with it as well. So if I have the opponent jump here, I'm going to show you. As you can see, I would recommend using 4LL more often than not, because you're just going to be guarding if you whiff, and if you didn't whiff, then it's going to confirm on hit for you. So that's what I recommend use JL for. It's not really that good of a cross-up tool unless your opponent's characters are kind of tall. But as you can see, it's not really that good to use outside of JM or in comparison to JM. So moving on, we have JM, the best air normal that he has, I believe. So this goes a pretty long way. It's basically his Android 21 normal. It goes very far. As you can see, always crosses up. No matter how many times I do it, it's always going to cross up. It's also really good to use as a jump in because of how fast it is and how long it is. It beats this because you can barely hit people with JL, and JH is a little bit slower too. So speaking of JH, JH is pretty standard. There's nothing too amazing about it. It's just your standard jump in normal. I will say, however, with JM, if you were to add J2H as an input and OS it, you can get something like that going on. And J2H will always connect. It is a very, very strong option to use, because even if you, say for instance, if you are low to the ground, and I did MVP there, right, so it connects there, but if I were to do, right, and in certain situations that will become 2H if you're wary enough, and that's just a really good thing to practice, because J2H is pretty good. Now I will say with J2H, this move is pretty here and there. There's some uses for it. There's some uses I wouldn't recommend too much with it, but there's more often than not uses for J2H. So obviously, as most of you know, J2H can cross up on certain opponents, specifically like this, most meta characters, right? However, J2H has more uses than that. For example, if they block this, you actually have options like level 3 there. You can also do MDP. You can also, if they're standing and they block the cross up, which is, it happens, you can do something like this, where you're you're -6, but you still have options, you know, right? Because they're still standing, and you can also do something like this, or you can always do assist. So you're not limited with J2H as an option, and it's only -2. So if you're not comfortable using options after J2H and you just want to see if it confirmed or not, you can just let it rock, and you'll just be -2, and it's not something that you necessarily have to worry about. So with J2H, there's also other uses for it. I don't see a lot of people using these the J2H for this purpose, but it acts as a sort of tool for covering up back. So if I do like this, for example, as you can see, it's going to hit the opponent very far up, and I'm +1 there, but in certain situations I'm even more plus, like I'm +5 in certain situations. So if like this, I'm +5 there. So you kind of want to just understand when and where your J2H will hit. Certain characters like Android 17 or Android 16, they can't really answer cooler there, whereas he can kind of do this and just be in there. So J2H is a very good normal. I would recommend learning when and where to use it. Don't use it too far up from the ground, because you're going to be -40, which is completely punishable. And if you are going to use that, then make sure it's a situation where you know it's going to hit. So with that being said, those are all of his normals, outside of maybe like JS. But JS we already covered a little bit with talking about 5S. Let's talk about his let's talk about his specials. So his specials are pretty basic. They don't have like really any spectacular use. We're just gonna talk about them real quick. So the dives, L dive, M dive, and H dive. So as you can see, the L dive is going to be -4. The M dive is going to be plus, depending on where you block it, because if you do it like over here, it's going to be +4, right? But 236M is very niche. I would not recommend using it as a stagger tool. Mostly use it as a spark bait tool, because this is quite punishable. If you can react, it is easily punishable. So 236L is good to use because it is safe. It's not always going to get 2H'd, but if they do 2H it, then you're staggering incorrectly. So, or they just hard red you. But overall, 236L is the one that you're going to be using the most for combos, but not overall, as 236H has very good utility with a Dragon Rush Crush. So if your opponent is not aware, they can get something like this happening to them, or they can go into 5Ls. They look very similar. Of course, it's not a 50-50, because there are certain situations where your opponent can just 2H you if they option select correctly. So that's when you want to throw in your assist, something like this, where you get protected or something like that, and it hits them out of it. So just cycle through your options. Don't be too predictable, because if you do this, right, you can sort of open your opponent up, or if you do like this, it can fake a Dragon Rush, which is really good. But those are his main offensive tools. With as far as his specials go, the rest are going to be either like niche tools or things that you want to use in stagger strings. So the DPs, they're okay. LDP is the one that you're going to be using the most, because it covers it covers Super Dash really well. Super Dash, the DPs are Rekkas, and if you don't understand what that means, basically you can just do one input and then you get to select the next input that you want to do. So for example, this is LL. It's always going to put you behind, or put the opponent behind. LM is going to put the opponent in front of you, and LH is always going to put them behind you, but you get a follow-up, which actually gives you more damage, and it also gives you more Oki. So after learning that, you can sort of cycle through which ones you want to do. If you want to focus on the J2H mix-up, you can just throw them into the mid-screen using the L1 into the H. So it really just depends on what your game plan is. Now, as far as the MDP, it is quite slow at 19 frames. So if you want to use HDP, that's fine. They both deal blue health. So it really just depends on what you want to do. This one, of course, is much more punishable, as it is slower, and you kind of don't have any leeway with it. it's niche. It's niche. It's not the greatest DP in the world, but HDP is quite good at 10 frames. So you just get used to using the one over the other, or whichever preference you have. MDP covers most options in the game, but there's some situations where it just doesn't cover it. So there's another thing about the DPs as well. They can be easily low profiled, especially against characters like Teen Gohan 2M. Fun fact, if you're Teen Gohan and you do like a meaty 2M, then you can just low profile it immediately. So with that being said, overall, I would just suggest cycling through doing DP and challenging just straight up, just because, I mean, you would die less if you'd done a challenge in certain situations. So those are his metered specials and his regular specials in general. So we're going to talk about the S specials. The 236S is a beam, and 214S is a grounded OTG, which means on the ground. Basically, if you knock the opponent on the ground, you can follow up where most characters can't. So it's a really good tool for him to have. 214S in general is interesting because you can do something like this, right? And it gels into vanish, so you sort of conquer neutral with this tool. But however, it is minus like 50, plus 50, something like that. So just be careful when using it. You don't want to use it too much. Vegito A exists, and he's gonna smoke you for it. So 236S, it's a high hitting beam, but it's still a beam. It's nothing much to write home about. -7, which is pretty good for him to have. But overall, it's just a combo extender and a tool that you kind of want to use scarcely. It's not something that you want to rely on too much. Now, as far as his dive kicks go, they are also good at getting out of the corner. So if you do something like this, you're able to get across the screen quickly. However, as you can see, you're kind of stuck in that animation for a little bit. So you kind of want to do something like this, where you kind of cover yourself with an assist, or you want to make sure that you're actually going to be hitting them on the other side of that dive kick. Now, J2H can also serve as something to get out of the corner. It's not the greatest. Like I said, you kind of want to cover yourself with an assist, but it's still an option to take you out of the corner. Now, as far as his specials go, he has 4 specials, 2 of which are identical, but the 2 we're going to be talking about right now are the level 1s. So the air level 1, pretty standard. It does less damage than this grounded version, but they're both pretty good to use. I would recommend, if you want to kill a person, kill a character, I would recommend using the grounded version as much as possible. And how you would achieve that is if you did DP any of them into HDP, and then you did level 1. And just for math purposes, the grounded super does 900 when scaled, and the air version does like 800 when scaled. So it's like 100 damage difference between the two. So I'd recommend using the grounded level 1 as much as possible. A common way you can do this too is if you get a Dragon Rush. You can always go into 2 and 4S and to grounded level 1. Now, of course, at certain hit stun scalings, that's not gonna work. Unfortunately, his combos aren't that lenient to him, but it's still something you can shoot for. So the grounded level, the air level 1 mostly serves as just like you only have 1 bar left and you can't get the next to kill, so you just kind of want to go into it. It's still good to use, but I'm thankful that the devs actually made his grounded level 1 the one that we use, or for his DHC. So moving on to his level 3s, they're both really good defensively, but they both do different things as well. So this one, he poses up. He's basically untouchable. If you touch him, then you get hit with a level 3. This one is a grab, and the way that you beat it is if you crouch. You can get 2H for it. I would be careful 2Hing it though. I would just punish it normally, because if you have a 2H that stands like coolers, you will actually get grabbed out of your standing animation, which I think is silly every time it happens, but it can happen. His guard point super, on the other hand, is the one that you're going to be using most, because it acts as a means to deal with safe jumps. It acts as a really good deterrent against pressuring Cooler. It's something that it works more effectively than his DP, believe it or not. So it's something that you want to throw in and kind of make your opponent respect you if you have more than 3 bars. I will mention the frame advantage of these 2 supers are quite different. As you can see, this one's going to be 65, and the other one is going to be 55. So as you can see, they both have different frame advantages. There's different setups you can go for with the reversal one, but overall they kind of do the same thing. The true reversal level 3 is it deals less damage because it is guard point, and the grab level 3 actually does more. So depending on which situation you're in, if they're both applicable, I'd recommend going for the one that does more damage. So with that being said, I'm just going to cover his assist real quick, and I'm going to leave you guys with some food for thought. So his A assist is DP. It is similar to his regular MDP. It can be low profiled. It goes a far distance and has a considerable hit stun, as you can see. So it is actually quite a good assist. His B assist is his 3H, and it allows for pretty wonky, situations or interactions. I'd recommend using the A over it just because of how fast the A assist is over this 3H assist. But overall, it's not a bad assist to have in the game. So if you want to go for that and your team works well with it, I recommend using it. C assist, there's nothing special about this assist at all, except for his beam hits really high. So that's something you can go for. Overall, I'd just recommend using A over C any day. As far as team compositions go, Cooler likes characters that are very good at staggering, just because you can sort of throw his slower assist into the mix and go for 50-50s, or you can do unsafe things and call the assist behind him and sort of allow the assist to do the work for you. And he likes characters that allow for good level 3 mix as well. So Android 18 being one of his best partners, basically you just kind of always want to go into our level 3 when you can to kill, and or to mix after, and you sort of want to structure your offense around that with Cooler, because he himself doesn't have the greatest mix, but with the new J2H mix, who knows, right? So I also suggest playing a neutral assist with him. My team with him is Base Vegeta, Cooler, and Android 18B, just because he likes having the neutral assist, and overall the team just works really well. Base Vegeta and Cooler work really well. I can't say why, because it's, gotta keep my secrets, right? But just kidding. Basically, Base Vegeta gets all of his weak spots covered by Cooler. And with 18, she can always barrier up and do the A assist with Cooler. So it's kind of a, back and forth with how they work, and, her level 3 is great. So overall, I would just suggest either a neutral assist and a character that can have a good level 3 mix after, or, just play lab coat. Just lab coat up. $5, dude. That's all you got to do. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave comments below. Let me know how the intro was. I worked really hard on it. I love you guys. Hope you have a great day. And until next time.